Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
Welcome back to the program. I'm Zev Brenner. Who would have thought that the village of Lawrence in Long Island, which has a lot of Orthodox Jews, would be a contentious battle for mayor? Well, there is a contentious battle for mayor. We're going to be presenting both sides. With us right now is Nahmias. He's chair of the Nassau County Bridge Authority. He's originally from Mexico, studied at the Albert Einstein School of Economics in Mexico. He's on the board of directors of Hebrew Academy Atlantic Beach, formerly was executive chair of the Israel Heritage Foundation, and he's looking to be the next mayor of Lawrence, Long Island, election June 18th. Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us.
We're glad to be here, Zev.
Thank you. So you're involved in so many different things. Why do you want to be mayor of Lawrence?
You know,
how large is the population there?
The population here is about 10,000 people. There's about 6,300 registered voters. Why I want to be mayor? The truth is, it's not about wanting to be mayor. It's really about wanting to make change. I didn't want to be chair of the Bridge Authority of Nassau County, but I was asked to do it to make change. As you can see, we've made a very significant change in a very short period of time. But part of making change is listening to your constituents, listening to people. For a very long time, the residents and the community of Lawrence has been ignored. As a constituent, I've had nothing more than just feedback for them. Most recently, the main decision that led me to running for mayor was the fact that we've set up a committee at the Nassau County Bridge Authority to deal with a lighting problem that actually entails the village of Lawrence. There are 54 lights that are out approaching the bridge, and part of it is on Rockhole Road, that are the property of the village of Lawrence, and the village of Lawrence has the responsibility of maintaining those lights. And for far too long, those lights have been out. And when we did our research and we looked at those particular mile markers, we saw that there were 170 accidents, 24 plus injuries, and there may have even been some fatalities. And the issue is very dire. You want to make sure that you're addressing public safety. So I formed a committee at the Bridge Authority, and I recused myself from that committee because I live in Lawrence to address it. And during a board meeting, we had our former deputy manager, Rosemary Avola, speak, and she was right away cut off by the mayor. I then had to stand up before the vice chairman took over, who's the head of the committee, and I had to stop him short and let him know, no, Rosemary needs to be heard. This is a serious problem, and you cannot avoid the problem. Well, he goes on, the lighting is not our responsibility. The wiring is the issue, not the bulbs. We've been fighting with the state. I'm like, if you're pointing, the state says it's your problem. The Department of Transportation, the commissioner said it's your responsibility. You're saying it's the state. You're both pointing fingers at each other. To me, it seems you should be talking to each other, finding out a way how to resolve this problem. But no, he didn't really care.
How long is that problem going on?
For quite a few years now.
It had been resolved?
No, it has not been resolved.
Is it the state? I would assume it's probably a lot of money. It's not just putting in bulbs. It sounds like it's more complicated.
Yes, to get into the details of it, the administrator there started quoting, this is going to be $600,000, $800,000, $1 million project. We're not doing it. My response was then our authority is going to pass a resolution, was going to meet on a resolution, and if need be, it'll be the responsibility of the taxpayers to fix this of the village. You can't just let it go. We did pass a resolution to put them on notice of claim that this has to get resolved. Now, to shorten the story, because I know you have a lot more to ask me about, our attorney hired the Hank Electric, who's the prevailing wage contractor. You see, in government, you got to hire prevailing wage plumbers, prevailing wage electricians that are vetted by the system. They did an assessment and discovered of the 54 lights, Zev, 45 of them or 44 of them just needed bulbs, fixtures. The bulb is the fixture. They just didn't maintain them. 11 of them have wiring issues because the wiring that was used wasn't the correct wiring, was manipulated wiring, wasn't the code. And that's why the whole project is about 200, I would say up to about 250,000 to fix, but 70,000 of it is 44 lights that can be resolved today as we speak.
So what happened is, does the state take care of it? Does the Lawrence? No, if you're
So-
going to be mayor, who is going to be renewers? If
Well,
let's say you were in charge today, who would be paying for it?
So,
Lawrence,
you asked a very
state?
good question. So I've been speaking to our state senator, the Honorable Patricia Canzanori Fitzpatrick, and the Honorable Presiding Officer Howard Coppell, and they're both willing to chip in somehow with a grant to fix it. But from what I understand, I just don't understand. From what what I'm hearing is that the Village of Lawrence is reluctant to take the money. So it's not even.
Why would they take the money? I mean,
you know what? It's beyond me, but we're going to get down to the bottom of it. This, by the way, this has been going on, Zev.
Yeah.
Since end of last year, since we met with them. We're in May now. Do you realize that if there is an accident and someone gets hurt really badly, the fact that the Village of Lawrence knows about this could put a huge significant liability on the village. We need to get past this. Look, Zev, there's no reason why the Village of Lawrence should have spent $800,000 on a kosher fast food joint at the country club, or $500,000 at golf simulators, or $300,000 in Zion Park, pardon me, which, by the way, still looks the same, before fixing its lighting problem. You know, on Washington Avenue, someone got killed here because the lighting was poor. So we need to get back to the basics of running a village. We need to get back to understanding what it is to run a village. There's no reason why a country club should be running a deficit, and we got to get back to literally fiscal responsibility.
The country club is run by the Village of Lawrence.
They have a separate company that they outsource the way it's run, and they go back and forth in terms of the deficits and the project investments. But there's a $5 million IOU right now by the country club to the Village of Lawrence. This is not right.
So we're going to get to the country club. I'm just curious about the lighting. So if you were mayor, would you be spending the money, or would you be getting it from the state or from the elected officials?
You know,
Have they agreed to take care of all the money? I mean,
I would be working with our elected officials to take care of it. My understanding is we have to lay out the money and then they reimburse us. I would work it out with them and get it done. To me, it is important. Safety is important. Community is important. That's what matters.
So now, and is there reserves in the village with that $250,000 to spend? And then
Well, the village in 2018 had about 14 million in the bank, according to those records, which I do have. And today, according to the email that went out from Alex Edelman, I think it's around $3.5–4 million that they have left. I think 800,000 is a deposit for the sewer treatment plant sale. For 15 homes, by the way, that my opponent approved for overdevelopment in the area, but yet my opponent is saying I'm not for overdevelopment. Very confusing, Zev, very confusing.
By the way, for the record, it's a term limited position, so Alex Edelman, the current mayor, cannot run again. So you're
Correct.
running against somebody who is not the mayor.
But it's his
Paris
deputy mayor. Deputy
But-
mayor, for the record.
Okay, but somebody so it's really a fresh race. Let me ask you this question. According to the article in the paper, now you're currently head and you're dealing with the authority, dealing with, of course, with the tolls. I'm referring to the Nassau County Bridge Authority, and you mentioned that you're in a contentious situation with Lawrence right now. So how could you be mayor? Let's say you get to be mayor. How could you be mayor and also head of the Bridge Authority at the same time? You would have to give up one of them, right?
No, I would not have to give up one of them. I would essentially look, if the job at the village became, if it needed more of my time, I would step down because community comes first, Zev.
But isn't there a conflict? You know, you said there's a conflict between the Bridge Authority and
There
Lawrence
is.
right now.
There's a conflict over the lighting issue, but there's not a conflict whether I was in one place or the other. Remember, Zev, I formed a committee to deal with this matter.
But yet you spoke
Recusing
up
myself.
but you spoke up because you felt it wasn't being done right? You said you felt there was something not being handled, so you stepped in and said, let the person speak.
I did. And then the vice chairman took over thereafter and let them know and which is Mr. Vincent Pasqua, and voiced his opinion. The way we work in the authorities, we form committees to deal with issues. So, look, it could become a problem if the authority ended up suing the Village of Lawrence. That could be a problem if I became mayor. And if that's the case, I would step down and let the authority do what they needed to do to resolve that conflict. Because as of right now, per the attorneys, there is no conflict currently in place. But if there is a conflict, Zev, rest assured, I will step down from my community.
No, but since there could be a potential be a conflict, so you would only step down in the case where there was actual litigation, even though there is a contentious situation. You have to admit there is a contentious situation between the Bridge Authority and the Village of Lawrence right now because of the lights.
The Village of Lawrence has been placed on notice of we gave them a notice of claim. We are taking our time to ensure that they resolve that problem. My understanding is that the presiding officer and our state senator are working to resolve the problem. So right now, there is no reason to file any type of further to pursue the lawsuit until we know for sure that they're not willing to do it. Look, come June 18th, things can change, right? But the bottom line is, I think it'd be very premature to step down from one and pursue the other without us seeing this thing through first. So
our guest is Sam Nahmias, chair of the Nassau County Bridge Authority, is running for mayor of Lawrence Village. We mentioned about 10,000 people in Lawrence, and from the last election, about 1,700 people voted. This is a contentious race. Do you think there will be more people be out there voting this time around on June 18th?
You know, I'll answer that question. You know, this was a very difficult decision because it involves family. It also involves dirty politics. You know, these local village elections are like food fights in a school. You know, they're going to call you names. You know, they're going to do everything in their power to try to get you to dissuade your decision making. The fact of the matter is, the more I spoke to people, the more I realized they're not apathetic to the issue. There are a lot of people that are angry. A lot of people are upset. And a lot of people want change. So there are 10,000 residents in change, 6,300 registered voters. I would imagine that this is going to be a very large turnout election.
Is it a personal situation? Because it seems like it's nasty. And I said, I'm hearing from people it's a very hotly contested race. But is it personal? Do you think that it's dirtier than most campaigns as far as the attacks from one party to the other parties?
So you ask a very good question. I'm not sure what you mean by it being personal, because we've never made it personal. My opponent has made it personal by calling me a developer, by calling me, someone who has financial interests in a village, by going on and spreading gossip and rumors in order for people to fear voting for me. That's personal.
What's so bad about being a developer? Why is that a dirty word?
When you're going around saying that someone's going to overdevelop the area, the 878, he's involved in these projects, when they're not true, yeah, it gets a little personal. But here's how I truly feel, if you really want to know. I think that Deputy Mayor Hopak is a nice lady. I think she's done a lot of nice work for the village. But what the Village of Lawrence needs is a chief executive officer and a board of trustees, which would essentially be a board of directors, to essentially operate the village like the best of businesses. Go back to fiscal responsibility, fix our lighting, fix our roads, ensure there's safety and security in the community. That's what we really need. And unfortunately, I don't believe that Ms. Hopak is the right person for the job. Again, I think she's a nice lady. I think that she's done a lot of great work in terms of the ceremonies and the plannings of the parades. But being a mayor requires a chief executive officer. I have that experience, Zev.
How big a budget is the budget for the city, for the Village of Lawrence?
The Village of Lawrence's budget is around, it's under 7 million. It's about 6.5 million and change. Unfortunately, the residents of the Village of Lawrence are going to face a big burden, because while my opponent's been saying no tax increase, keep taxes low, in April 11th, they voted in a 9% tax increase on the residents. So you got to factor in another $300,000 on the tax base. The tax base is around probably going up to around 3.5 million from around 3.2 million right now, which means taxes are going up by about 9%. And this is all available in the minutes. I mean, it's public knowledge. The remaining comes from different budgets. It comes from other revenue streams that the village collects from.
Now, but with inflation, I guess there's always increases. Unfortunately, even at the Nassau County Bridge Authority, for a while, people were upset the fact that Easy Pass, well, I like Easy Pass coming in, but that they felt there was going to be a raise in tolls, and you had to deal with that for a while, correct?
Yeah, I inherited that problem, didn't I, Zev?
It was
I wasn't there 70 years ago. Right? I don't think I was on this planet 70 years ago. The fact of the matter is I inherited a system that was broken, a system that has been known with a legacy of nepotism, a system that wasn't necessarily managed right, a system that was left long forgotten. And yes, when you're a mayor of a village, you know who your number one responsibility to is, Zev?
To who?
To your constituents, your residents. Do you know who your number one responsibility to is at the Bridge Authority?
You're going to say the same.
No, I'm not. I'd like to see if you know.
I guess you want to make sure everything is running properly. So whoever's the authority, the people behind to make sure everything is running smoothly. I guess that would be you. So who are you looking
our
to
bondholders?
Our
bondholders, the people that have lent us their life savings via bonds that we pay interest on and pay maturities on that debt. That we have to ensure the financial viability so that we can continue to pay that debt. And when you're going to be downgraded by a bond rating agency and you're barely meeting your debt covenants, right? That's not a good situation to walk into, is it? So
are you telling me that before you took over, it was losing money?
The authority lost $4 million since I took over, yeah. Over the past 3 years.
How was it losing so much money? It seemed to me that I wouldn't call it a gold mine, but certainly seemed like very little operating expenses. So why would there be such a deficit?
So it's a great question, and I'll go into it in a little more detail. Each toll booth that's cash requires 3 individuals to manage that toll booth, 8-hour shifts, right? And then vacation days, right? Then you need people, and you need part-timers on backup. Then you need a weekend crew, right? You have 11 toll booths. That's 33 employees. That's not including the weekends. The system was plagued by pension deficits because in the government sector, people work for a government agency. They get their health insurance, then they get their benefits and their pension, and they retire out. And based on the retirement, they're entitled to a pension. So when someone says, what's your expenses? There's probably $4.5 million of payroll if you include pension and insurance liabilities. So
have you cut back on the personnel? You've done more.
We have reallocated our personnel. We have cut back on the part-timers. We are utilizing the employees in a different manner. Remember, it's government, so it's not so simple. You can't just fire union employees. You got to work with them. So when you're against the wall and you have a system, you can't just go to a union and say, I'm firing employees because I don't need them anymore. There are different protected classes, and you got to work with your union. Your union gives to you, you got to give back to them. You got to be, the unions built America, Zev. So you got to help the union. So firing people isn't necessarily the right option, and it's not the right thing you want to do. So we were faced with a situation. We were as I got there, one of my board meetings, the manager wanted to declare an emergency so that we can right away start spending money and figuring out how to bring in a new system that collects cash. To me, why are we going to spend $3 million on a system that was running on Windows CE that was failing, and to go in and to replace that entire system with a new custom system? It just didn't seem right to me. So there was some transition. A new manager came in that was retired from the MTA. That was the deputy commissioner of public works at Nassau County. We brought him in. Great guy, Ray Webb. He knew the people over at the MTA. We crossed party lines, worked with the MTA. They sponsored us as an affiliate member of the consortium of Easy Pass. 362 days later, for the same amount of money, we were able to install the Easy Pass system.
I think people are happy. Easy Pass you were the only bridge that didn't have Easy Pass in the local.
Yeah, we're like probably on the Guinness Book of World Records, I would say. You know, a lot of it also, I mean, people ask us, why do we still have the arms? You know, if you take off those arms, your collection rate drops to about 80%.
Because people just drive through.
Right. So there are other employees that are there that are still managing the two toll lanes that we left in place that are still cash, which requires, you know, 3 employees during the week per lane, and obviously weekend and part-times and vacation days. And so that's still running fully. We've instituted a discount in the process of taking on some feedback to people like yourselves that live in Lido. You live in Lido Beach.
Lido Beach, correct.
Yeah, Point Lookout, Long Beach, and Atlantic Beach. Initially, Atlantic Beach was demanding a discount. I didn't feel that it was fair to offer it just to one place. So your rate went from $2 to $2.50, which isn't so bad, Zev, considering that if you go back 20 years ago, I mean, our tolls this is the first toll increase in 2 decades, right? $2 almost 2 decades ago is what, $4 today? So we are not even at inflationary standards. And your unlimited was incorporated into your Easy Pass, right? So you can subscribe to unlimited. And for $162.50, it's a $32 increase. You now have it embedded. So the feedback that we got from people, we'll pay more, just make it go faster, right?
Well, there was opposition. People were upset. I got tons of messages on WhatsApp. People said,
a lot of the opposition, I think, came from a lack of misunderstanding and miscommunication. And you know what? In government, you have to learn that sometimes the message that is sent out has to be retweaked because, you know, people get nervous. They hear things. People hear change. They don't understand change. So in my opinion, the one learning thing that I can say we did learn from this is better communication.
We're speaking with Sam Nahmias. He is the chair of the Nassau County Bridge Authority. They operate the Atlantic Beach Bridge, which connects the 5 towns to Atlantic Beach, Long Beach, Lido Beach, Point Lookout, etc. He's looking to be the next mayor of Lawrence, New York, in a hotly contested race. What are some of the other important issues in Lawrence? And I know you mentioned the lighting. Is that an issue that most residents are thinking about, or are there other issues?
There are other issues. Safety and security. You know, last year there have been a number of cars stolen. The evening that I showed up to basically sit down and watch, you know, the Rosemary and the vice chair speak to the board, there was a prior attendance by some very angry residents over the fact that there was a home invasion. So that security is a very, very hot topic in the village. I mean, you know, there's concerns over its congestion. I am, for the record, anti-development. I like development that makes sense. In the grand scheme of things, Ev, a lot of new houses in Lawrence, right? So everybody that's moving in there is essentially a developer if they built a new house. So I'm against large-scale development.
Is there a lot of development in Lawrence? Is that I know there was an issue with one of the country clubs where there was a whole big to-do about it, right?
Yeah, so the Woodmere Club. So I think, you know, my perspective of the whole situation, the Woodmere Club, is I think we need to come back to the residents, have a refresher, sit down with them, hear them out, because they're confused. Time has passed. They want to be heard. Residents want to be heard. They want to be understood. Zev, there's nothing wrong with bringing it to a vote of your people, how to resolve the issue, right?
Well, was there a vote on the Woodmere Club? There was. No,
you call a referendum. You need to call a referendum. There has not been a proper referendum here.
So right now, just operating as a catering facility.
Right now, the club is closed with the exception of the catering facility and the synagogue during the weekends. But the fact is, you know, we need to figure out and sit down with the residents what will be the least impactful thing that can be there that they would be okay with, properly voted in by them. I think that is what's very important. We need to bring it back to the residents. Let them be heard.
So the
I don't
issue,
think we should be rushing into any decisions.
okay, well, it's not rushing. It's been a number of years where nothing's
There's a
been
sense
happening.
of rush now as there's an election going on.
So how is the election going to impact the Woodmere Country Club? Is the feeling is that what I heard from out there, the sort of the thinking is that you're going to develop that? Is that what they're saying?
No, that's not what they're saying. Maybe that's what my opponent is spreading, but that's incorrect. What I am hearing is that they're concerned that a deal may be rushed in before the election because the outgoing mayor is leaving.
And
a
if the election is
trustee-
June 18th, that's a very short period of time to vote
Yeah,
something.
well, that's been what's been going on in the last several weeks. There is a meeting May 22nd, and then there's a meeting on a moratorium on June 18th, the same day of the election.
So is that the number one issue that Lawrence's people who live in that village are facing? Is there other, aside from crime, you mentioned some crime, is those are the hot button issues that's going to determine the election?
I think what's going to determine the election is the people taking a step back and seeing who is going to do better for our village, who's going to run the village financially in a financially responsible manner, who is going to take charge of this village, who's going to run it like the best of businesses, who's going to ensure that we're safe and secure, who's going to ensure that we work out the best possible solution with this development issue, who's going to ensure that any type of overdevelopment is stopped until we can address the congestion issues that we have currently on the roads. I've lived here for almost 2 decades, and it's congested. It's congested. Look, I owned a piece of property. It was a residential house right next to a public parking lot in Cedarhurst. Across the street is Lawrence. I ended up selling it to the village of Cedarhurst. I don't know if you know this. And I sold it to them at a 3% interest rate, 3.25% interest rate. I'm holding the paper. Why? Because it's the only property that made sense for them to buy because it's next to their public parking lot. They're going to expand it and add 70 cars to it.
Parking is a big issue. Every time I go to Lawrence, it's
I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I don't think you're going to get a 3.25% mortgage today. So I did something out of the kindness of my heart to help the community, which certainly could have been sold, and I could have done much better with it. And I got to tell you, I pulled into that lot a few times, and there were other cars there. There were people pulling in behind me, making U-turns. I said to myself, this doesn't belong being developed. This belongs being a parking lot. So, you know, I could have gone back. I could have tried to develop something different there. I said to myself, this is not the nature of what I do for a living. Get rid of it. Let them benefit from it. They missed the opportunity a few times to buy it. It's a financial situation. Not all villages can cut you a check. So you work something out and you go from there. And that's what we did. So
it sounds like this race, as I mentioned at the onset, is a contentious race. Any plans for a debate? I know even President Biden will debate will debate Donald Trump. And you're going to debate your opponent. Any public debates scheduled?
I would welcome one if my opponent is up for it. I am totally for a debate.
Okay. I like debates. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining us, Samuel Nahmias. He is, as I mentioned before, he's originally from Mexico, New York. He is currently the chair of the Nassau County Bridge Authority. He'd like to be the next mayor of Lawrence, New York, whose current mayor is term limited. It's only 2 terms, so he's looking to be the next mayor of Lawrence.
That's actually, Zev, a correction. It's 4
terms in two years?
Correct. 8-year max.
8-year max. Okay. So you're looking to be the next mayor of Lawrence, New York. Thank you for joining us.
You got it. Thank you, Zev.
Thank you for tuning in to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Good job.